Welcome back, conference. If people can make their way to their seats, I'd be much obliged. While we are waiting to get sorted in terms of the resolutions before us today, I'll take this opportunity to read out the results of the National Office Bearers elections. So firstly, to the position of President, Graham Campbell, 117, Chris Hanlon, 38, Graham McCormack, 77, and Maureen Watt, 434. And Maureen Watt is re-elected as President. National Treasurer, that was unopposed, and congratulations to Peter Grant. National Secretary, Alex Kerr, 340, Chris Stevens, 311. Alex Kerr elected. Campaigns Convener, unopposed, Jen Leyden. Congratulations to Jen. Local Government Convener, Diane Alexander, 126, Katie Loudon, 509. Policy Development Convener, Deirdre Brock, unopposed. Member Engagement Convener, Naz Anas Mia, 319. David Burkett, 145. Norman MacLeod, 154. Congratulations to Naz. Women's Convener, unopposed, Katie Hagman. Equalities Convener, unopposed, Sadie Matthews. BAME Convener, Alex Gill, 378, Ellie Coppenlinger, 221. Alex Gill elected. Disabled Members Convener, Summer Chen, 81. Alec, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, so please, apologies. Alec Garv Dovnalach, 147. Michael Gibbons, 200. Andy Stewart, 152. At stage 3, Michael Gibbons elected. The regional members of NEC will be Callum Cox, Alison Thulas, Christina Cannon, Francis Murray, Ian Coburn, Kate Campbell, Silas McGilvray, Lee Robb, David Burkett, Ben Dashfer, Amy Callaghan and Kevin Johnston. The other positions in terms of the committees will be posted tomorrow online. So commiserations to everybody who put themselves forward who was unsuccessful. It is an important part of our party democracy that people do continue to put themselves forward, and congratulations to everybody who's got elected. Thank you. Okay, let's get cracking. Resolution 24. I am going to ask Shirley Ann Somerville, MSP, to move the motion, and Kirsty Blackman will second the resolution. Warm welcome to Shirley Ann Somerville, MSP.
Thank you very much, Conference. You'll see the motion before you today calls on the UK Government to scrap its proposals on welfare reform and for that same UK Labour Government to follow our leadership in our ambitious programme to end child poverty. Now, you'll all be aware, I'm sure, that the Labour Government passed its Universal Credit and Personal Independence Payment Bill just before the summer. You'll also be aware that a lot of it was carved out. But I think it's important that we still reflect on that was what UK Labour wanted to happen. They wanted to bring something forward that was going to make it difficult for people to be able to wash themselves, to feed themselves, to eventually have any dignity and respect in their lives. That came forward as a proposal from our new Labour government. That's the type of change they wanted to see for disabled people. Now, Conference, you've got to recognise, I suppose, that there were some within UK Labour that didn't back those plans. But let's be very clear who did. Labour MPs in Scotland and Labour MSPs. Not a word from Anas Sarwar, not a word from the Parliamentary Labour Party in the Scottish Parliament. So if you want a reflection of what Labour governments bring, look no further than what has happened in welfare reform and the silence and the betrayal of Scotland's disabled people by Labour in Scotland. Because what effectively we were looking at was something that would push 250,000 people into poverty. Now, it's not gone away. There are still reviews that are being undertaken by the DWP, and that word review must strike fear into the heart of folk right across the UK. And the bill that was passed is still estimated to push 150,000 people into poverty. So, Conference, the choice next May is stark. You have an SNP government that is lifting people out of poverty, or UK and Scottish Labour that are pushing people into poverty day in, day out. That's what they've delivered for people, and we will stand against that and fight that every step of the way. Now, I have had the honour and the privilege of representing the Scottish Government for many years now, and in that time I've met with many disabled people and disabled people's organisations. But I think it's very important that we once again use the opportunity in our conference today to reassure them and their carers and their loved ones that when Labour cuts, we will always be on their side. We will always support them, and we will never take forward policies that Labour are delivering either in Westminster or in Scotland. We will be on their side yesterday, today and every day in the future in the next Scottish Parliament. Because, of course, this is not the only example we've seen. Labour haven't been in power that long in Westminster, and my goodness, they've shown us a track record. Disabled people, pensioners being failed when they stripped away the winter heating payment. Our waspy women betrayed once again by Labour, who are fine enough to stand with them for the photo opportunities, but left them to one side when they got the keys to number 10. That's what you get when you get Labour in government. Now, we know because of the work that we are doing in the Scottish Parliament and within the Scottish Government that child poverty is falling in Scotland. That's because of the positive choices that we have made. But you see Labour and Tories uniting with Reform to criticise the work, the investment we are putting in to the people of Scotland. That £3 billion your Scottish Government pays to allocate to tackle child poverty and the cost of living crisis. That delivery, as Keith Brown set out in his speech, around free prescriptions, free eyes care, bus travel for 2.3 million people, free tuitions and so much more. That's the type of bold action that we are delivering, and that's because that is integral to our core mission in the Scottish Government, ending child poverty in Scotland. So the call in this resolution is simple. You can have a UK government that is failing, or with Scotland and with the SNP, we've demonstrated how self-government has protected and delivered for people right across our country, and with independence, we'll deliver the fresh start that they need to go further. Thank you, Conference.
Thank you, Shirley-Ann, and can I invite Kirsty Blackman to the stage, please? I quite like the cut of Kirsty's jibe. Do you have a special interest? Aye.
I needed an Aberdeen bit in it. Good afternoon, conference. Good afternoon, loonies and quinies and wifies and mannies. It is awesome to welcome you all to Aberdeen. I know I'm 2 days late, but welcome anyway to Aberdeen. I really appreciate the chance to speak to conference about the social security system, about the dignity and fairness and respect that the Scottish Government is delivering day in, day out in our social security system, about the fact that the Scottish Government is reducing child poverty, the only part of these islands where child poverty is falling, because the Scottish Government has put that at the heart of our mission. And can you imagine not putting that at the heart of your mission? Can you imagine saying, we want children to remain in poverty? Can you imagine keeping the 2-child limit in place, as UK Labour have, which puts 100 extra children into poverty every single day that they keep that 2-child limit in place? The Scottish Government has delivered the baby box, it's delivered the Scottish Child Payment, it's delivered bringing kids out of poverty, it's delivering the winter fuel payment, it is delivering for the people of Scotland. Can you imagine, conference, if we weren't hamstrung by Westminster, if we weren't having to mitigate the policies that UK Labour are putting in, if we weren't, we had Labour Party came in and we thought, gosh, that's got to be marginally better than the Tories, right? We're still having to mitigate. We're still having to make these choices every single day in order to try and make life that wee bit better for people in Scotland. And it is better. We've delivered free prescriptions. We've delivered free university. We've delivered much more dignity, fairness and respect than the system doing in England. But imagine what we can do with independence. Imagine what we can do when we are in charge of our social security system, where we can deliver for all those folk who are continuing to fall through the cracks, who are looking at the cost of living, looking at the price of pasta and tatties going through the roof and thinking, how on earth am I going to be able to afford my next heating bill? The Scottish Government is delivering for them. With independence, we will deliver that system of fairness, dignity and respect for every person in Scotland.
Thank you very much to Kirsty and Shirley Ann. Please note, future speakers, that they have been well within their time. So, can I, with that in mind, invite Councillor Stefan Hogan to the stage, please. Stefan is from Eden Branch and he's a candidate for Fife North East.
Thank you, Conference. I am proud to rise in support of this resolution, a resolution that speaks to who we are as a nation and the kind of society we want to build. Scotland's social security system has been designed with dignity, fairness and respect at its very core. Values that stand in stark contrast to the cruel, callous approach taken by the UK Government. Ever since 2010, back then, the Liberal Democrats got into bed with the Tories. They betrayed students, betrayed those with disabilities or health needs, and betrayed our children. Now everyone can see what we already knew, that no matter what colour is in Westminster, red, blue, orange, or God forbid, aqua, they all seek to punish people for their circumstances. Not here in Scotland. We will always seek to support them. From March 2026, the SNP government will scrap Westminster's cruel 2-child cap, a policy that has forced parents to choose between feeding their children or putting a roof over their head. The Scottish Fiscal Commission estimates that this action alone will benefit over 43,000 children in its first year. Just think of that. That is the difference that progressive government makes. Lives changed and hope restored. Meanwhile, the UK government's proposed changes to universal credit and PIP threaten to drag thousands of vulnerable people into poverty, creating barriers cutting support and stripping people of their dignity. Organisations like Glasgow Disability Alliance have made it clear this bill is cruel and it must be scrapped. Conference, Scotland is the only part of the UK where child poverty is reducing. That is not by accident. That is because of Shirley Ann. That is because of the SNP Scottish Government who have chosen a different path through policies like the Scottish Child Payment. We are showing that when compassion leads policy, poverty can be defeated. Research now shows that if the UK Government matched key SNP welfare policies, 1.8 million families across the UK could be lifted out of poverty. Just imagine the difference that could make. So today I call on the Labour UK Government to follow Scotland's lead, to follow the SNP's lead, to abolish the two-child cap, end the bedroom tax and match our commitments to eradicating child poverty. Because, Conference, dignity, fairness and respect should not stop at the border. They should be the foundations of governments everywhere. Please support the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. And if I can invite another one of our wonderful candidates onto stage, Kate Campbell, who's a candidate for Edinburgh, Eastern, Musselburgh and Tranent.
Good afternoon, Conference. Like many of you, I suspect, I did not have the highest hopes of this Labour government, but my God, I thought they were going to be even a little bit better than the Tories. I found it completely unfathomable that one of their first acts was to remove the winter fuel allowance, that people were less well off, people were finding it harder, people were being pushed into poverty, and life was harder for them under a Labour government than it was under the Tories. Nye Bevan said, "The language of priorities is the religion of socialism." Well, we know what the priorities of this Labour government are. It is very clear. It is power for power's sake, regardless of how they exercise that power. This is a Labour government that promised that growth would underpin their economic plans, and yet they've raised employer national insurance contributions, which has created job losses and business closures. It is economically illiterate, and because their economic plan is failing, they are now choosing, a Labour government is choosing to balance the budget on the backs of the poorest and most vulnerable people in our society. It is unacceptable, Conference. This is a Labour government with no vision, no ambition, and no mission to make life better for the people that need it the most. As Harold Wilson said, the Labour Party is a moral crusade or it is nothing. Well, Conference, it's not a moral crusade, is it? And sadly, Conference, sadly, this is the best that we can hope for from this broken union. As has been said before, the alternatives for a UK government are actually terrifying. Scotland needs a fresh start, and we need it now. We need our independence, because we know that with independence we can do things differently. We can end austerity, we can invest in our communities, we can invest in renewables, we can invest in housing, we can invest in the infrastructure that we need. We can invest in Scotland, and that will create jobs and it will create prosperity. And that prosperity will bring money back to our independent Scottish government. It sounds good, doesn't it? Yeah. It's happening, Conference. It is happening. Our independent Scottish government will have the funds, the money it needs to invest in the priorities of the people of Scotland, to invest in our NHS, to invest in our schools, and to invest in our welfare system. Because all of us, any one of us, could end up needing that support. And it is the hallmark of a compassionate society that we have a welfare system that supports the most vulnerable people. And Scotland is a compassionate society. Independence is coming, Conference, and we need to all put our shoulders to the wheel to get those 65 MSPs, which we can do, and that will be us on the start of our independence journey. But in the meantime, we do have this UK government, and we need to hold them to account. They have let down the WASPy women, they've let down the pensioners, they've let down disabled people. At least make them stand up for children living in poverty. Thank you, Conference. Support the motion.
Thank you, Kate. Conference, there are no cards in against. Can I put it to you all that we accept this resolution by acclaim, please? So we are moving on to Resolution 25, which is entitled North Link Ferries. And it's my great pleasure to introduce to you all Hannah Mary Goodlad, who is our fantastic candidate for the 2026 elections for Shetland. And Hannah Mary is going to move the resolution.
Friends, I'm that blithe to be here with you all today. I'm really delighted to be here with you all, and if I may, would you allow me to engage a little before I start speaking? Hands up if anyone has ever been to Shetland. Good to see. Keep your hand up if you've made that journey by our ferry. And still keep your hand up if you've made that journey 14 hours overnight and had to sleep on the cold, hard floor because there were no beds available. Most hands went down on that last question. And for your sake, I'm glad. It is an awful reality having to be stuck on that ferry when, in a wild winter's night, the boat is pitching and rolling for 14 hours and you're sleeping on the floor and not able to have a good night's sleep. But it is the reality that many Shetlanders face, and it's a reality that I want to change. With almost 100,000 visitors annually, our islands are popular. Tourism is an important part of Scotland's economy and a much welcomed part of Shetland's too. But at the same time, it is putting real strain on our lifeline service. In recent years, beds on the overnight ferry have been booked out months in advance. And many Shetlanders who require the flexibility of last-minute travel, whether for family, healthcare or work, we just cannot get a bunk. And so sleeping in the common areas on a chair or sleeping rough on the floor is the only option. Friends, if we could take a bus, we would. If we could take a train, we would. But we accept that we cannot. This is what it means to live in Shetland. We accept that there's a North Sea. We need to be able to have a bed to lie down, though, when we are crossing that North Sea. This is not a holiday cruise for us. This is essential travel for work, for hospital, or for family. We cannot change the North Sea, but we can improve how people cross it. Conference, when I was writing this speech last week, I got Shetlanders to be in touch with me with their stories and their anecdotes. I'm really grateful to the 100 people that got in touch with me and trusted me with their words, and it's their words that I share with you now. There's Kathy, who at 76 and awaiting major abdominal cancer surgery had to sleep flat on the floor because there was no bed available. There's Jill, whose teenage daughter was harassed while sleeping in the common area. Now she cannot travel alone and misses out on opportunities on mainland Scotland. There's Charles, a telecoms engineer who has to work at heights, a dangerous job already, but made 10 times harder when he gets into Aberdeen, has to drive, and then work after no sleep. There's Linda, who woke at 2 a.m. in the morning to find a drunk man with vomit down his front, looming over her, inches from her face. She's now terrified to travel alone again. There's Isabel, a single mum of 3 bairns, taking her children to visit their grandparents, but can only afford to travel in low season, meaning that the children have to miss school. And Margaret, grieving beside her young daughter, on the floor, in a sleeping bag, trying to reach her child's father's funeral. No dignity, no privacy, no rest. Friends, I know that these stories are hard to hear. And I know that you, like me, will want to do everything in your power to change the reality for these Shetlanders. We cannot change the North Sea, but we can change the way in which people cross it. Conference, this isn't just about comfort. This is about equity, safety, accessibility, but ultimately, this is about the ability and right to travel with dignity. A lifeline service must be safe, it must be affordable, and it must be reliable. My motion is simple. Let's reserve a set number of cabins and vehicle capacity for islanders, and let's scrap the peak ferry fare for islanders. Conference, I am so proud of this SNP government, so proud of the government's decision to scrap peak rail fares. It's a game-changing piece of policy that has revolutionised mainland travel. And we now have the chance to extend this model to our island links as well. Improving public transport is a just priority for this party, for the SNP, that we all unite behind together. Friends, Shetland is a beautiful place, and I urge you all to come up if you can get a bed on the ferry. It's a beautiful place, a remote place, and a very, very resilient place, bustling with culture, with heritage, seafood, and technology. No wonder people want to live, work, and visit our islands. Friends, we are deeply proud of who we are, and we are deeply proud to be part of Scotland's national diverse story as well. So, Conference, I ask you to back this motion, because no islander should be priced out of visiting their family, travelling for work, or having to reach vital health care. And no islander should have to sleep on the floor to do so. Friends, let's pass this motion and make our Lifeline ferry service worthy of its name again. Thank you.
Can I invite Jim Fairley to second the resolution, please? And Jim will be followed by Robert Leslie from Orkney. 3 minutes max.
3 minutes max, OK. Ladies and gentlemen, it might be surprising to know that I'm actually a first-time speaker at conference. And I wasn't saying that for the applause, I promise you. What I was saying it for was, I've always believed that if you're going to speak at conference, have something worthwhile to say. And I can think of no better reason to speak for my first speech at conference than to ensure that we send the message out that we need to get the absolute dynamo that is Hannah Mary Goodlad elected to Shetland. She has got experience, she's got energy, she's got ideas, as we've just heard, and she's got a hunger for independence in her bones that each and every one of us shares. And if we secure that seat, that leads us to getting very, very close to that majority, which then allows us to give all the people of Scotland the right to choose to be an independent country. Now, I'm delighted to second this resolution in principle. It'll clearly be subject to the budget process, and without a doubt, it's a subject that we should actually absolutely be looking at to find out what it is that we can do to help that island connectivity. There's a number of things that we already do. We have an islander discounts scheme. We've got the National Islands Plan. We've got National Island Impact Assessments on every policy that we ever deliver for our Scottish Islanders. We've got the Carbon Neutral Islands Programme. There's a number of things that we want to do for our islands because we value our islands so much that we want to make sure that they feel every bit as part of Scotland as every one of you and I do. Now, I visited Shetland recently in my ministerial capacity, and I've got to tell you, it was the strangest feeling. There was a feeling of being there was an anchor had me in Shetland. There was a feeling of being home, and that sounds ridiculous. I've never been there before. I've got no connection to it. But the people, the landscape, the seas, everything about it absolutely gripped me, and it is why I will absolutely be going back, and every one of you should be doing exactly the same thing. But one of the things that is absolutely clear when you're in Shetland is that you are on an island. You cannot drive for 5 minutes without seeing coastline somewhere. So the points that Hannah Mary is making are absolutely crystal clear. That connectivity is vital to all our island communities, not just Shetland, not just Orkney, it's to the Western Isles. Every part of Scotland has to have that island connectivity, so we will look at every opportunity to make sure our islanders feel as Norse as they do Scots, or as very much a part of the Scottish mainland, by making sure that we build that connectivity. Ladies, I'll second the motion. Thank you.
And can I invite Robert Leslie to the stage, please? And just for future notice, because we've still got a few resolutions to do, people can wait on the left-hand side of the stage as well. Let me cut down a wee bit of time. Over to you, Robert.
Conference, if you ken anything about Orkney and Shetland, you'll know that our islands enjoy healthy rivalry in many sporting competitions. Whether that's on the football, the hockey or the rugby pitch, the netball, squash or badminton court, or even darts. These competitions between the Reds of Orkney and the Blues of Shetland are keenly contested. But the rivalry is friendly, and we also share many things. We're Norse heritage. Some islanders think we should still be Scandinavian. We're Westminster constituency, but hopefully not for too much longer. And we share ferries. As candidate for Orkney and Shetland twice, I've been well told on my campaign trips north on how well Orkney is served by ferries, for 2 Pent and Firth services, as well as that shared capacity on routes that take us to this beautiful granite city. I've more than once been told by Shetlanders precisely how many more metres of freight capacity and how many more passengers Orkney can shift compared to Shetland, and I come away feeling that it's my fault. You wouldn't think that the boats were built in the era of a Labour-Lib Dem coalition. It's the clear frustration that persuades me to side with our northern neighbours on this and recognise the right to a ferry service that is affordable, reliable and safe. And while Orkney folk don't suffer as badly as our Shetland friends, my wife reminded me that we were on the Northlink sailing where we witnessed staff measuring up the bench seating to put in wooden dividers, which prevents passengers from lying down to sleep if they can't get a cabin or a pod. That kind of unfriendly measure needs to go at the same time as the actions we put in place with this resolution. Please give this your backing so that we can have plain sailing from now on.
Friends, can I put it to you that we pass this resolution by acclaim? So we are now on to Resolution 26, which is going to be moved by Sadie Matthews, who is our newly re-elected National Equalities Convener. And Sadie is going to address us on the recognition of unpaid work done by carers. Warm welcome to Sadie, please.
Afternoon, everybody. I'm going to steal Hannah Mary's idea and ask for you to do a little bit of audience participation. I hope that's okay. So can everyone who's in charge of the care of someone, so that could be your children, you could be a teacher looking after students, elderly family members, could you please all raise your hand? If you feel you look in on someone, take care of them a bit. Fantastic. Can you keep your hand up if you care for someone because they're your ward due to a disability or illness? Okay, that's quite a few of us. I hope that's maybe helped you feel a bit less alone. Maybe for those of you who identified with us but felt unconfident to put your hand up, this has helped boost your confidence. You're seen. I see you. My mum has instilled in me the importance of that, of seeing people. I think she might be watching, so hi, Mum. She's an unpaid carer, the kind of person this resolution is intending on supporting. She takes care of me, and she takes care of my dad. He's also watching, so he has to get a hello too. Our family isn't necessarily conventional because I also care for my parents. We all fulfill in for each other and take care of one another on the harder days. It's hard. I worry for their health and well-being every day, and they worry about mine. It is hard, but I would choose this life with them over and over again, without any doubt. I didn't actually realize I was a carer until a couple of years ago because it's just my version of normal. It's not work, it doesn't take any extra effort, it just comes naturally. I would choose this little unconventional life over and over, and I would like to say that our biggest barrier has been learning to communicate with one another, letting each other know when today's a harder day, when we maybe need a little bit more. It's not. It's widely known that carers can struggle for money. It can be hard to find an employer that will provide reasonable accommodations to ensure you can fulfill your caring duties. It can be hard navigating the traditional working hours of 9 to 5 if you're up with your ward in the night. This is something I'm personally guilty of, so I'm sorry, Mum. Part-time work is an option many carers utilise to ensure they can provide for their families, but during a Westminster cost of living crisis, a part-time wage just is not enough. As usual, this problem comes back to the UK government, as most things do. To help with the deficit created by working part-time or simply being unable to work whilst caring for one or more wards, people have to turn to universal credit, which is part of the benefits system. This process is long, grueling, and at times humiliating. On the other side of things, the Scottish Government has given us a glimmer of bright hope with the carer support payment. This payment is to support carers for additional costs they may be facing. This might be needing to pay for fuel, as their ward might be needing taken to an appointment, or household items that are required because of their disability or terminal illness. But again, we have to come back to Westminster. They have decided that the carer support payment is qualified as an income. It's not. It's not payment for the hours of work carers put in each week, because that would equate to 50 pence an hour for 24/7 care. It's to cover the expenses that are directly correlated to caring. It's not a wage. Since the Department of Work and Pensions have decided this is an income, it is taken pound for pound out of universal credit. This is, frankly, disgusting. In an independent Scotland, we wouldn't be tied by such unfair, disrespectful, and unjust rules. This is just another example of our Scottish Government working exceptionally hard to make the lives of our citizens better and being shut down. That's why this resolution is calling for active discussions with Westminster regarding how the carer support payment interacts with universal credit, and if they're unwilling to negotiate, which is something we are all too familiar with, it sets a provision to increase the payment for the deficit in the future. We would be having to subsidise for the failures of the UK government again, something we are having to do far too often. I appreciate we're tied by the budget, again, thank you Westminster, and so I don't expect this to happen overnight or even quickly. I just felt it was vital that our party had this policy so that should the opportunity arise, we can provide more financial provision to those in caring positions. I would ask you strongly to support this resolution. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sadie, for that contribution. Can I invite Irina McLean to the stage, please? Irina is going to second and speak for the resolution. And while Irina is making her way to the stage, can I also remind conference about the St Andrews Night Dinner and Awards, which will take place on the 21st of November in Glasgow at the Marriott Hotel, and you can get information on how to book tickets in the conference handbook. And a very warm welcome to you, Irina, 3 minutes max.
Thank you. Thank you, conference. You had very personal experience, and I want to add to that, but not talking about myself. We talk about cost of living all the time, but we rarely talk about cost of caring. Across Scotland, thousands of people are caring every hour of every day, not for a wage, not for a praise, because they love somebody. And some shocking numbers. I've got this calculator, so I won't bore you. It will be very easy numbers. Scottish Census 2022 showed that there were 627,000 of unpaid carers in Scotland. And they contributed 15.9 billion to the economy. I think we could stop here. And 52,000 out of those people are currently recorded as being supported by local services. They keep our health and care systems running quietly in the background and too often invisibly. In my work in social care policy, I've seen the difference unpaid carers make. And the main thing why it's important, because they do love people they support, but also they save us huge amount of money. So 83 pounds a week, it's about 50 pence an hour for 24/7 care. And if they claim universal credit, as we heard, Westminster takes a chunk of that away. That is not recognition. That is a political neglect exercised by this Labour government. And we do not need to reinvent the wheel. We've got Nordic neighbours who we are learning from every day, supported, respected, and built into fabric of our social policy principles. Because care is not a private act of sacrifice, it's a public value, and it deserves public support. And in light of the upcoming elections, as a party, we must make that clear to the people of Scotland, not just in this conference hall, but in our next manifesto. We need to show to people of Scotland that this is what leadership looks like, seeing the invisible, valuing the undervalued, and acting where others look away, because this is the Scotland I want to pass down to my children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irina. There are no cards against. Can I put it to you all, friends, that we pass this resolution by acclaim, please? And can I invite Tommy Shepherd to the stage to move the resolution ending public funding to arms companies supplying Israel, please? This is resolution 27. Tommy Shepherd will be followed by Fatima Joji, please. Tommy.
Thank you, Conference. It's my privilege to move this, the last of our motions at this conference, and I do so at the request of Nadia El Nakla, who cannot be with us today, and on behalf of the SNP's Friends of Palestine group, which she convenes. Conference, we look tentatively at what is happening right now in Israel and Palestine, and we do so with relief and with trepidation. Relief because the slaughter has finally stopped. The skies over Gaza are silent and this war may be coming to an end. But fear that this is a fragile peace that could break down at any time, and much is still to be done to ensure that it can be sustained. The tragedy, of course, is that an agreement like this has been on the cards at several times over the last 2 years. And the failure to grasp that opportunity before has led to the needless deaths of tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians. But we need to understand why it is happening now. And it is happening for one reason only, and that is because the world has finally lost patience with Benjamin Netanyahu and his far-right allies in the Israeli cabinet. And that world, it seems, now includes Washington. And that is to be welcome. But understand this, that hasn't happened by accident. That has happened because humanity across this globe has organized on a scale not seen since the fall of apartheid South Africa in order to defend Palestinian human rights and express their solidarity. Pressure has been applied, pressure the like of which we address in this resolution today. And be under no illusion, this is not the time to relieve that pressure. If anything, we need to intensify it. We need to keep the pressure on to ensure this peace is sustained, and then to put in place the building blocks of a lasting settlement which require the end to the illegal occupation of Palestinian territories, an end to the settlement program inside the West Bank and those occupied territories, an end to the paramilitary terror gangs of settlers who terrorize Palestinian civilians. And most of all, the acceptance by the State of Israel that the Palestinian people have the same right to self-determination as do the people of Israel. When we talk about pressure, of course, we can apply more through independent states. And we are not yet in that capacity. We are part of the United Kingdom. And it is a matter of deep regret that after 16 months, this Labour government still has in place 90% of the arms licenses to the Israeli Defence Forces that it had when it came in. Those ought to be ended and suspended now until the genocide is over and until we have a sustainable peace. So we have no power over those licenses in Scotland, but we must do what we can. And I want here to applaud the actions of our party leader, John Swinney, who has, without equivocation, called out the genocide that is happening and led the opposition to it. What we need to do now is focus on the text of this resolution. Yesterday, we looked at the totality of commercial engagement with Israel and how we might use levers there to apply pressure for change. Today, we focus just on those companies who supply arms and the means by which people can be killed. And the message in this resolution is very simple and very straightforward, and I hope that they are listening. And it is this: if you choose to do business with genocide, then the elected representatives of the people of Scotland choose not to do business with you. The conference, finally, I want to say a word about anti-Semitism. And I want to tackle the false narrative that tries to equate criticism of the State of Israel with anti-Semitism. That is not what it is. There is not an arrest warrant out for Benjamin Netanyahu because of the faith that he practices. And we stand here determined to resist the pernicious racism and anti-Semitism and to uphold Palestinian human rights. And we see no conflict between them as we go forward to try and see a lasting settlement and a two-state solution in the Middle East.
Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Tommy. And can I invite Fatima Joji onto the stage, please, to second this resolution, please. Fatima needs to be brief.
Just been told I need to be brief, so I will. Conference, I've been asked by our friend and colleague, Councillor Nadia Al-Nakla, to second this motion, and I'm doing so gladly, because this motion speaks to something important. It speaks to the kind of governments we elect and the trust you place in us as your representatives in terms of our responses. Now, I'm saying this because some have said online, it's not happening here in Scotland. Let's focus on our own issues. But I say this, we must care. We must care not just about what happens on our doorsteps, but what is done in our name, because I say not in my name, and how governments speak, act and lead. Now, I want to say a quote from the late Tony Benn. It speaks to a different issue, yes, but the principle remains the same. The way a government treats refugees is very instructive because it shows you how they would treat the rest of us if they thought they would get away with it. What you allow your governments to do to others, it will eventually do to you, whether that is silence, complicity or positive action. Our Scottish Government has shown compassion, direction and bravery. It's one of the many reasons I am proud to stand here today with the SNP. These values of justice, humanity and peace are embedded in who we are. That is why we must look to the Westminster Government and say shame. Shame on your months of silence. Shame on your complicity. Shame on you. Keir Starmer, you finally recognised a genocide. We have a ceasefire, but it's a little too late. And words alone are not enough. Recognition must be followed by action, ending complicity in any crimes taking place and ensuring that this ceasefire is not violated. What we watched should not be normalised. We were seeing civilians, innocent civilians, bombed in their beds, starved of their bread, streets that once echoed with life, now filled with ash and anguish, families forced to flee, risking death at sea because the land behind them holds certain death. UNICEF estimates that Gaza now has more child amputees than anywhere else in the world. That alone should move everyone to act. And let me be clear, Netanyahu's government is harming both Palestinian and Jewish lives. The Hamas attack on 7th of October was horrific, an act of terror that we will always condemn. But genocide and starvation cannot be the response. Continued occupation is not the road to peace, and it is not the way to a two-state solution. Two truths can exist at once, as my colleague said. This motion calls for rigorous human rights screening to be a condition of all public funding, and it looks ahead to an independent Scotland that stands proudly for peace, for justice and for human rights. Hate is on the rise, fuelled by war, silence and inaction, but our government's response reflects who we are. It is why I trust that our values, our policies and our response will continue to strive to protect human dignity. Thank you, Conference.
Conference, can we pass Resolution 27 by acclaim, please? Okay. Right, colleagues, we're moving on to two topical resolutions this afternoon. We will have to accept a formal seconder for both topicals because time is short and we are all waiting for our leader's speech this afternoon. Nonetheless, we do need to give these topicals the space that they deserve. So in that vein, can I invite Councillor Samita Kumar who is the candidate for Edinburgh Southern Western, who is going to speak to topical resolution.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Conference. Conference, Labour's proposal for a digital ID system, the so-called Brit card, is not progress. It's a political shortcut dressed up as security. And it tells people like you and I that no matter what we feel, how long we have lived here, no matter how much we've given, we still have to prove we belong. But identity isn't something you log into. It isn't a barcode. It's not a QR code to be scanned or a number to be stored on a database. It's not something that should depend on whether your phone works or whether your signal drops or whether you can navigate yet another complex government app. For many, especially older people, disabled people, new Scots, complex digital systems don't offer freedom. They build walls. They turn public services into checkpoints. They say, you're welcome, but only if the system says so. Conference, I'm proudly born in Fiji Islands. My heritage is a melting pot of so many ethnicities and culture. Let's just say it's ever so slightly complicated, thanks in no part to the British Empire. But complexity shouldn't be treated as a problem to solve or a risk to manage. Complexity is human, it's history, it's me. My family and I have lived in Scotland for over 21 years. We have built our lives here, we've worked, we've studied, we've volunteered, celebrated, and sadly, we've also mourned here. We've paid our taxes, we've made friends, we've raised the next generation here. Sometimes I even struggle with the word or the label New Scots because honestly, I don't feel new. I feel what I already am, simply Scottish. Conference, the one thing I will never identify as, unfortunately, is British. So Keir Starmer, I hope you're listening. I'm not British. And like my friends, my neighbours, and hopefully this conference, I am proudly, fully, fearlessly Scottish. This digital ID scheme won't make us safer. It will make us smaller. It will say to people, you need to earn your place, you need to show your card, you need to prove your worth before we accept you. And that is just not the Scotland we live in. We are in a Scotland that believes in inclusion and compassion. We don't measure belonging through paperwork or passwords. We measure it through people, through kindness, through solidarity, and the way we look out for one another. And Conference, that is what is at stake here. Because once we normalize carrying a state-issued digital pass to prove who we are, we open the door to something far more dangerous. It's not safety, it's control. A digital ID will not build trust, it will erode it. It will not create unity, it will divide it. It will not make us stronger, it will shrink us. We cannot allow anyone, not Westminster, not Whitehall, and especially not Labour, to tell Scotland who belongs within her borders. So, the choice between carrying a Brit card or standing up the kind of Scotland we believe in, then Conference, I know exactly where we stand. Let's condemn Labour. Let's reject their digital ID. Please accept this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samita, and I'm very grateful to our Paisley buddy George Adam for waiving his rights to speak and for agreeing to formally second the resolution, the topical resolution 2 that was on the screen earlier? And can I put it to conference that the resolution is accepted by acclaim? And can I now invite Kevin Stewart, MSP, who's going to speak to topical resolution 3, condemning proposed cuts to local journalism in Aberdeen. Kevin, over to you.
Thank you very much, Convener, and thank you, Conference. And I realise that I'm the person that is keeping the leader away from his speech, so I'll be very brief. But this is an extremely important issue that we're going to be discussing this afternoon. Because for those of us that live in the north and the northeast, STV North News is immensely important. Many of us remember the glory days of Grampian TV. And when STV took over, they pledged that licence would always be kept separate. STV North would be different from STV Central. But now, our news service is under attack, and journalists right across STV are facing redundancy, some 60 jobs. And I have to say that that is not good enough. Now, STV boss Rufus Radcliffe appeared at the Culture Committee this week. Not a sparkling performance by Rufus, I have to say. But there was one thing that I agreed with him on. And he said that the truth is at risk in a world where many are getting news on social media. So when he admits that the truth is at risk, why is it that trusted journalists are about to lose their jobs? And I tell you, Conference, they are trusted journalists. The STV North News team managed to get an audience share of 40%. 40% in this day and age, which is quite unbelievable. They are trusted. Andrea Brymer, Norman MacLeod, Tyrone Smith, Chris Harvey. 40% audience share. Fantastic stuff. And I have to say that they do that, appear on our screens every night, given very, very good, high-quality news. And for those of you that live in STV Central, don't think that you'll be unaffected by this if STV gets their way, because you will get less local news too if everybody has to have their news broadcast from Glasgow. And we are in a situation whereby all of this has come about because of a small £200,000 loss. A £200,000 loss, but £3 million worth of cuts. And Mr Radcliffe and managers are not going to be affected by this. Mr Radcliffe will still continue to collect his £450,000 a year salary plus bonuses. He won't be affected. Neither will managers. And that is not good enough as far as I'm concerned. Let him take the pay cut. Let him take the pay cut. And I'll finish on this, Convener, because the new licences for STV North and STV Central were signed on the 1st of January this year, a mere few months ago. So why is it now that they are saying that STV News North has to go, that cuts across the company are going to happen? Why did they not admit all of these difficulties before those licences were renewed? And to Ofcom, I say, you must step in here. There must be a 12-week consultation period, and you must listen to the people who value STV News North. Thank you.
Colleagues, I'm very grateful to Jackie Dunbar for agreeing to formally second this topical resolution, and can I put it to you that we accept it by acclaim, please?
Oh, it's about believing in a better future. Here in Scotland, it's about doing things differently. And that's what my leadership and the SNP Scottish Government offers. For too long, the wrong choices have been made at Westminster. Bills rising faster than wages. Scotland is treated as an afterthought. But when Scotland makes the choices, hope grows. Hope is believing in our children, free childcare to help parents, university without tuition fees, and lifting families out of poverty. Hope is easing the burden. Pensioners collecting free prescriptions. Young people travelling to school and to work for free. Scottish families paying less in council tax than the rest of the UK. And peak rail fares scrapped for as long as the SNP is in government. Hope is protecting what matters most. Waiting times now getting shorter. GP numbers increasing. Care based on need, not ability to pay. Hope is investing in our future, standing up to unfair energy prices and demanding that our renewable energy is used to reduce bills and power thriving communities. Westminster keeps making the wrong choices. Rising bills, stagnant wages, the damage of Brexit and brutal cuts. Labour offers no better than the Tories. And Nigel Farage is looming on the horizon. But it doesn't have to be this way. We can put Scotland's energy in Scotland's hands. We can repair the damage done by Brexit. We can end the Westminster chaos and reclaim our future. The people of Scotland, not Westminster politicians, will be in control. That is independence. That is the fresh start Scotland needs. Stand with me to create the nation you want Scotland to be.
Good afternoon, delegates. It's my great pleasure now to introduce our final speaker at the Scottish National Party's 91st Annual Conference. And I remember the first time I introduced the next speaker, when I finished the introduction, I walked away with a speech afterwards. So hopefully I won't do that this time. I think these last few days in Aberdeen have shown our party at its very best, engaging in debate, exchanging ideas, working towards a fresh start for Scotland and with the full powers of independence. And the success of our conference is testament to each and every one of you, because our party's strength, as we said before, comes from our membership. No other party in Scotland would have a hall full like this at their party conference. No other party in Scotland would have a debate like the one that we had on the future strategy for our party. And I'm very pleased, especially with those individuals that proposed amendments, had concerns about that strategy, who came up and spoke to me afterwards and said, it's no longer the strategy of John Swinney and Keith Brown, it's the party strategy and we'll get right behind it. That shows what kind of party we are. Our next speaker joined the SNP at 15 years old. By 22, he was our youngest ever National Secretary. And how about commitment to the cause of that kind of longevity? He's been an impassioned campaigner for Scottish independence his whole life. And his dedication to working for a better Scotland for everyone who lives here is without question. He served the people of Perthshire for nearly 3 decades. He served the people of this nation in the Scottish Government for 17 years. And now he leads our nation as First Minister. Friends, when our party needed him, John Swinney stepped up. As was said by someone this morning, he stands head and shoulders above the opposition. With the 2026 Holyrood election now firmly in our sights, The SNP boasts an election-winning machine and the most formidable political leader on these islands. Conference, it's with great pride that I welcome my very dear friend, the First Minister, our party leader, John Swinney.
Friends, what a conference we have had. What a wonderful welcome we've received here in Aberdeen. And what a great result last night, albeit slightly nerve-wracking. Winning certainly suits Scotland, and conference winning for Scotland is what this party is all about. I want to talk about where we're going as a country. Right now, the choice is a simple and a stark one. We must not resign ourselves to a future defined by Brexit or by sky-high bills. And delegates, we are certainly not going to allow Keir Starmer or any Westminster politician to define us by Brit cards. We must define our own future, a future where we devote all of our resources to transforming the lives of people in Scotland, where our immense energy wealth puts money into people's pockets, not into the coffers of Westminster's Treasury or the offshore bank accounts of billionaires. A future where the poverty that has blighted lives for far too long is not swept under the carpet, but instead is swept out of Scotland, where our National Health Service is freed once and for all from the threat of creeping Westminster privatisation. Conference independence offers Scotland a fresh start. This is a moment of decision. We all face a choice. Decline, decay in Westminster and despair with Westminster Government, or hope, optimism and ambition with Scottish self-government. This is the moment for us to realise the true potential we have as a nation. Now is the time for Scotland to become independent. Delegates, on Saturday we showed how serious we are about achieving that goal by agreeing our strategy to get us there. We did so through reasoned, respectful and spirited discussion. In a world where democracy is under threat, I think it's safe to say that democracy is alive and well and thriving in the Scottish National Party. And it is democracy that will now take us forward. Our task is to win a majority of seats in the Scottish Parliament. We are going to break the logjam in Scottish politics. Delegates, I know things are not easy for a lot of people right now. Times are tough. We've had the financial crash, austerity, Brexit, the cost of living crisis. And through all those tough times, through all the storms of recent history, it's become crystal clear. Westminster does not work for Scotland. And I'll tell you what does work for Scotland. Self-government works for Scotland, and SNP government works for Scotland. We are a government that fights for Scotland every single day. That's what I offer. That's what the SNP offer at the election. Not a branch office beholden to London, but a government wholly owned by and wholly serving the people of Scotland. People need a government that will back them 100%. A few months ago, hundreds of workers at Alexander Dennis faced redundancy. An iconic bus manufacturer was planning to close its doors in Scotland. Labour stood back, offering nothing but press releases, platitudes and posturing, just like at Grangemouth. But your SNP government got to work. We rolled up our sleeves and we brought the company, the trade unions and the workforce together, and we're backing them with public investment. That is the power of self-government. Scotland at its best, and hundreds of high-quality jobs saved for the people of Scotland. I say it again because it's a winning formula. Self-government works and SNP government works. Just look at what we are achieving. Free childcare provision more than doubled. Council tax bills lowest in the UK. Water bills lowest in the UK. Income tax, most paying less, the highest earners paying more. Prescriptions free. University tuition free. Bus travel free for under 22s. Peak fares on our trains gone and gone for good. Waiting times down. GP numbers up. Record numbers of hip and knee operations on our streets. Crime down. In our schools, literacy and numeracy up. Record numbers heading to college or university and conference. Child poverty in Scotland at its lowest level in 3 decades. That is the SNP record. That is self-government making lives better in Scotland. But what about Westminster? They once said things could only get better. But on day one, Keir Starmer changed his tune. He now says things are only going to get worse. That's not what people voted for. But delegates, he's got form. Keir Starmer promised to be a left-wing Labour leader, and then he became a right-wing Prime Minister. He stole Jeremy Corbyn's clothes, and now he's dressing up as Nigel Farage. He hasn't even tried to implement the progressive policies that people backed him for. This vacuous Labour government is a symptom of a wider problem, a Westminster system that is broken and broken beyond repair. Labour and Tories are locked in a race to the right, a race that will only be won by Nigel Farage. Fear of Farage is driving Westminster to more and more extreme views. Brexit was bad enough. Now we face climate change denial. We face talk of mass deportations, even the ripping up of human rights laws. Delegates, let me be clear. Scotland's rights are not Westminster's to give away. Ideas that once seemed unthinkable are now common currency. That is Westminster's obsession. Not your rising shopping bills, not your kids' future, not your parents' care. Westminster has never been more out of touch with people's everyday concerns. It has never been clearer for Westminster, Scotland is only ever an afterthought. As well as being morally wrong, Westminster's race to the right is also deeply damaging to our society. The number of nurses the National Health Service was able to recruit from overseas fell by 80% last year. 80%. And in July, Westminster shut down the visa route for social care workers. They even withdrew job offers that had already been promised. As a result, thousands of care workers here in the UK, entirely legally, have been left high and dry, unable to work, while care homes are crying out for staff. In what world does that make any sense whatsoever? Well, delegates, I've got a solution. I can announce today that the Scottish Government is stepping in. We will sponsor these skilled staff so they can work, pay tax and help keep Scotland's care homes running. Hundreds of dedicated workers able to start work immediately. Scotland's older people must not pay the price for Westminster's prejudice. Conference, Westminster isn't working for Scotland. Self-government works for Scotland, and an SNP government works for Scotland too. Scotland is a welcoming nation, and we've always been an outward-looking nation. In all my years in politics, I can think of few who've embodied this ability to look outwards, more than the late and much-missed George Reid. George, of course, played an absolutely pivotal role in both the early breakthrough of the SNP and in the early years of our national parliament. But beyond our shores, he was widely known and respected for his humanitarian work. In tense situations, he brought people together. He gave hope to those who had none. I learned so much from George. We all did. And delegates, let's resolve today to carry on George's legacy, to bring empathy and compassion to everything we do, and to always, always fight for a better Scotland and a better world. In today's world, it feels like the values that George espoused are more important than ever. That means standing up to brutal dictators like Vladimir Putin, and Conference standing shoulder to shoulder with the people of Ukraine. And it means that even in the most desperate of wars, we must hold on to the hope that an end to the killing is possible. Hope that things can be better. And today has seen welcome signs that hope is beginning to bear fruit. For the first time since the terrible events of October the 7th, the people of Palestine and Israel have hope for peace. The pictures of hostages being released, of families being reunited, of refugees returning to their homes are deeply moving, deeply humbling. They remind us that even in the darkest of days, hope can prevail. But we must also remember how that is achieved. For hope to prevail, people have to step up, and they do. The campaigners, the aid workers, the political leaders, and the brave, brave journalists risking their lives to tell the world of the genocide in Gaza. They have stepped up. Now, we must all step up to secure the peace, to turn hope into reality for Israel and Palestine, for the displaced, the distraught, and the destitute. Aid must flow. Every life is sacred and of equal value. Every family, whether Palestinian or Israeli, deserves to live in peace and dignity. A two-state solution must be delivered. Peace must prevail. Peace is a long-term project. and it sometimes requires far-sighted investment. International development is very often the first line of defence, the defence against conflict, population displacement and humanitarian catastrophe. It is not a luxury. But at Westminster, Labour have slashed overseas aid, and unbelievably, the Labour Prime Minister used his conference speech to boast about the fact. We've got a very different view of the world. Tomorrow, I travel to Zambia and Malawi to mark the 20th anniversary of Scotland's international aid programme, and I am very proud to be doing so. In recent years, we've increased funding and expanded the scope of Scotland's international development efforts. Our funding has helped to build operating rooms for children's hospitals, support climate initiatives, and ensure children, in particular girls, can attend school. With full self-government, we could, of course, do so much more. The UK was once so proud of its international development programme, but now they all seem to be ashamed of it. That in itself is shameful. Labour is delivering less than half of the UN target for international development, slashing money for those most in need. But conference, with Westminster, of course, there's always billions for weapons of mass destruction. Delegates, let's be absolutely clear. An independent Scotland would proudly do her duty as a global citizen, and we will do it without the obscenity of nuclear weapons on the River Clyde. Conference. In tough and uncertain times, it is more important than ever to stand by your values. That's why the values of our leaders matter. In May, I will ask the people of this country to elect me as the First Minister of Scotland for the next 5 years. Our people are entitled to know what has made me who I am today and what that means for how I will take Scotland forward. A few months ago, the national newspaper asked me the 10 things that had shaped my life. I talked about the safe and secure start to my life given to me by my loving parents. I talked of following the exciting debates in the 1970s about establishing a Scottish Assembly, and from the disappointment of that moment, joining the Scottish National Party to change Scotland for the better. I even talked about my favourite band, The Jam, the seminal music for me from the 1980s, which I still listen to when I'm running these days. For me, their most iconic song has always been Down in the Tube Station at Midnight. That's an anthem that rails against the evils of fascism, against which I will always, always stand firm. I talked of meeting my wife Elizabeth, without whom I can do nothing of what I do today. I talked of my faith, of doing unto others only what I would have done to me. I talked of Scotland's islands, where I find peace in my life, walking the golden sands of the beaches of Tiree, of Harris, of my granny's home in Orkney, surrounded by the turquoise waters, the precious inheritance we have in Scotland that we must cherish. I talked about becoming a dad, and this year, for the first time, a granddad, and why it makes me so determined to do the best I can for the country that comes after me, the country that our children and our grandchildren will inherit. That's why becoming First Minister is such a privilege. It is the ultimate opportunity to serve the people of this country. That, my friends, is who I am. A son of our capital city, honoured to have represented one of the most beautiful parts of rural Scotland for almost 3 decades. A man shaped by all of Scotland. That is who the Scottish National Party will ask the people of our country to vote for as First Minister. It is the honour of my life to be First Minister. But let me in you into a secret. I'm just getting started. When I lead the SNP into the election next year, I will be seeking my own mandate from the people of Scotland, a mandate to fundamentally transform our country for the long term. I will continue to be a leader who listens in order to lead. There is no more important issue to all of us than our National Health Service. We all use it. I use it. My family uses it. And we will be forever grateful for what the NHS does for us. Yes, there are challenges, but we've all heard directly from people who praise our NHS staff and are positive about their treatment in the National Health Service. More and more people are being seen. Waiting lists are falling. More appointments are taking place. There are more operations and more GPs. But one key issue is the ATM rush for appointments. We want to make it easier for people to see a GP where and when it works for them. That's why I can announce today that the SNP government will open a nationwide network of walk-in GP services based in your community, on your local high street, near your child's school, or close to your workplace. They will break from the status quo. They will add to the care we already value, staffed by GPs and nurses, open from 12 noon to 8 p.m, and you won't need to call up for an appointment. That means more people can go after work when it fits with their lives. And to make that even easier, they'll be open 7 days a week. This is just the start. We will expand this network, but it will begin with 15 sites across Scotland. They will deliver over 1 million additional GP and nurse appointments, and the first will be up and running within the year. That is personalised care on your doorstep. That is self-government working. That's the SNP government working for Scotland. The Scottish National Party is thinking and acting in these new radical ways to respond to people's key concerns. It's why we brought in the Scottish National Investment Bank, the baby box, the Scottish Child Payment. It's why we used hard-won powers to get rid of the two-child cap, at the same time as Labour was disciplining its MPs for daring to agree. And believe me, Conference, we won't stop there. This party is and always has been, at its core, Scotland's true radicals. But while we're championing the new, Westminster insists on sticking to the old ways of doing things. There is a Westminster consensus that so often works against Scotland. It's why, in a land of plenty, life is still unaffordable for too many Scots. Because on Westminster's watch, the basic essentials of life, energy, food and more are becoming more and more expensive. In many ways, the deep-seated problems facing the UK right now are a culmination of decades of failed Thatcherite economics. An entire system accepted by the Westminster parties of being intensely relaxed about some people becoming filthy rich while everyone else struggles to get by. It was in part Scottish revulsion at the policies of Margaret Thatcher that catapulted Scotland towards the creation of a Scottish Parliament and the rebirth of self-government. We became, in Westminster language, a devolved nation. Today, I believe it will be revulsion at Westminster's race to the right that will change Scotland's status again from a so-called devolved nation to what we can be, a modern, outward-looking, inclusive, compassionate country, not a devolved nation, but the world's newest independent nation. That is the fresh start Scotland needs. Decisions about Scotland should be taken by the people of Scotland. No one else will do a better job of caring for this beautiful country than the people who live here. And I mean all the people who live here. Wherever you are from, whatever your faith, whatever the colour of your skin, let me make this clear. We are all citizens. We all have a part to play and a contribution to make. And Conference, yes, I am proud to say that refugees are welcome here. The race to the right at Westminster is one reason why independence is so urgent and necessary. Living standards in the UK have flatlined, and the promised improvements from electing a Labour government at Westminster have simply not happened. Just look at our energy bills. We were all promised a cut of £300, but what has Keir Starmer's government delivered? An increase of almost £200. Sky-high energy bills in one of the most energy-rich countries in the world. For Scotland, Great British Energy is fast proving to be the Great British rip-off. Delegates, it's time for a new approach. This week, the Scottish Government published a detailed prospectus for independence, how our economy could work, our migration system, our route back to the EU, our place in the world, and how we would build a new nation. The work has been done, but Conference, more than that, we've set out the potential for Scotland to be a very different kind of country. There is so much to be hopeful about as a new nation state. For countries of Scotland's size, the golden combination is the policy power of independence together with membership of the European Union. Scotland is fortunate. Our golden combination can be independence, Europe, and our vast, low-cost, renewable energy. Even without our advantages, independent countries, just like Scotland, Denmark, Ireland, Finland, Austria and others, are all wealthier than the UK, fairer than the UK, all have lower rates of poverty, all have higher rates of investment. Conference, we often pose the question, if all these countries can be so successful, why not Scotland? But for me, it's time to be much, much more assertive. It's time to stop asking the question. It's time to proclaim with confidence, if all those countries can be wealthier and fairer than the UK, then so can Scotland. There are some who say that the 21st century is heralding a return to an era of big powers. It is true that the biggest states often attract most of the attention. But look past the headlines and look at what's really going on. Because the reality is this. In the 21st century, it is the European states the size of Scotland that are enjoying the biggest successes. It is they who have the flexibility to target their resources and adapt. It is they who are upholding the rules-based system and the commitment to human rights, backed by the security of the EU, international cooperation and mutual respect. In this era of enormous global change, where the world has become so much smaller and technology advancing at such a rate, it is clear that cooperation to tackle the great challenges of the day is needed more than ever. And that, my friends, is the simple and stark choice facing Scotland. We choose not Westminster government, we choose self-government. We choose not isolationism, we choose internationalism. Never an island of strangers, always a continent of friends. Conference, our dear friend and my late colleague Christina McKelvey, the beloved partner of my Deputy Leader Keith Brown, left an extraordinary legacy. She championed the rights of the marginalised. She gave voice to the voiceless. But her passion stretched way beyond those of politics and the cause of Scottish independence. Christina wrote poetry. At her funeral, words she wrote so beautifully and so movingly were read out. Don't take the sunrise each morning for granted. Turn your face to her, soak in her power. To each day we step out, feet planted, with our strength aglow, we empower. Friends, Christina was telling us to make the most of each and every day. That sentiment matters now more than ever, because the country that Christina longed to see, and which she campaigned so hard to bring about, is in all of our hands. But that country has to be won. It needs to be won each and every day by the people in this hall, by those in the wider party and movement, and above all, by the people of Scotland. Because we are building a country for all of Scotland, a nation defined by fairness, where the sense of possibility runs deep through all of our cities, towns, villages, and through every community. A country in which the saltire will flutter proudly, but gently, as a symbol of an inclusive, welcoming, compassionate nation. We know there are those who seek a very different future for Scotland. So each and every day, we need to be stronger. Each and every day, we need to be more committed, more driven by our love for one another and for Scotland, for the better nation we know is within our grasp. Each and every day, keep that vision in your mind and, above all, in your hearts. And together, let's win Scotland's independence. Thank you very much.